This video serves as collective feedback for the Introduction to Food Webs assignment. Uh, what I plan to do is go through the answer key, and I also will produce a separate video that shows our last part where you had to construct an entire food web yourselves. So the assignment starts with some background information, and this I won't review, but it does contain some important definitions. So what you want to notice here is these bolded words and really start to uh, absorb some of this new vocabulary, okay? Because these are some new words for us. The activity starts with not a food web, but a food chain. And what we can see here is a linear pattern. All right, we have everything in one line. What does the arrow represent? Each arrow represents a flow of energy. So the green fly gets its energy from lettuce. So the energy stored in the lettuce is transferred to the green fly and onward until we get to our apex predator, the cat, who obtains its energy from this thrush bird. Which organism is a producer? If you look at our definitions, a producer produces its own food, and that would be the lettuce, the plant. All of these other organisms are consumers. Which organism is a secondary consumer? We have to be careful about which consumer we're talking about. The green fly is a primary consumer. The ladybird is the secondary consumer, the second consumer. Which organism represents the third trophic level? It's also the ladybird. When we consider trophic levels, you have to consider the autotroph, the lettuce. So that's 1, 2, 3 trophic levels. Predict what would happen if this food chain, if the green fly suddenly died. No more green flies. Well, what we can expect to see is two things. One is that the ladybird population would be threatened. And if that happens, if this population were to decline because its food source is gone, then it would be a cascading effect. We'd see the same thing happen to the thrush and eventually the cat. So this entire food chain would be disrupted. And what we'd also notice is if nothing is eating the lettuce, if left unchecked, we'll see a growth of lettuce, more lettuce being produced. So we see two things here. What I'm going to do is move this over. Oh, that won't work. And I'll move me over for now. And we'll look at some of these answers. So move me up here. All right. So we'll use this food web for questions 6 and 7. Number 6, define each of the categories below and then classify each organism from the food webs into herbivore, carnivore, omnivore, or decomposer. So here we go with number 6. An herbivore is an organism obtaining its energy from only the primary producers. And there's only one organism in this food web that does that, and that would be the small animals and protists. Because this is the only organism that has energy coming to it only from the algae. The carnivore, an organism obtaining its energy from consumers only, from other consumers. So let's see which animals are carnivores. They are the leopard seal, the crab-eater seal, the killer whale, and the elephant seal. So these 5. Every other organism receives energy from algae. These do not. So these 4 are carnivores. Finally, omnivores get their energy both from primary producers and other consumers. So we see krill obtaining energy from algae, but also from these small animals. We also see this penguin obtaining energy from algae and krill, the cod obtaining energy from algae and krill, and finally the squid obtaining energy from algae and also the small animals. So our omnivores are the krill, the cod, the Adélie penguin, and the squid. Also, I don't know if I'm pronouncing Adélie penguin right, but that's what we're going to do. There are no decomposers in this food web. A decomposer, look at this critical detail here. The decomposer supplies energy to primary producers. Think of an earthworm that breaks down dead organisms and produces fertile material to help grow plants. Here, there's nothing pointing to the algae. The algae is only a source of energy. Nothing is supplying the energy to algae. In real life, algae obtains its energy from some different bacteria, but that is not present in this food web. So not applicable. Your definition can include this, supplying energy to primary producers. Moving on to number 7, it's your job to peer into this food web and pull out from it 3 different food chains. There are more than one answer here, but all of them should start with algae because algae is the only producer here. Here it is. And I see at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different options, and even more probably for food chains. So let's just look at one of them that I wrote. I put down algae as the primary producer. The primary consumer, I put krill. So I took my food chain following this arrow to krill. From krill, I went to the penguin as the secondary consumer, and finally the killer whale as the tertiary consumer, or the third consumer. So your arrows just have to connect. And you could have, so many different ones, but they have to start from algae, and the arrows all have to connect. Part B, making a food web, will be a separate video because I will actually pull up what the food web looks like, and we'll take a look at it, and I'll walk you through how to build that. So for now, that is all we have.